She sent the cancellation text at 7:53 on a Saturday morning, 40 minutes before I was due to collect my children, and the reason she gave was that our youngest had a temperature. It was the 8th Saturday in a row. I am a father. I have 2 children, a boy called Finn who is 9 and a girl called Maisie who is 7. I had a child arrangements order, a legally binding document issued by a family court judge, giving me contact every Saturday from 10 in the morning until 6 in the evening. That order had been in place for 14 months. In the first 6 months it had worked. In the last 8 it had not. Every single Saturday, without exception, a text arrived before 10. A temperature, a stomach bug, a birthday party nobody had mentioned, a swimming lesson that had apparently been booked. 8 Saturdays, 8 excuses, 8 empty days. And the family court, the institution that had issued the order meant to prevent exactly this, had done nothing. Let me be specific about what nothing looks like, because I think most people imagine the family court as a responsive system. You have an order, the order is breached, you report the breach, something happens. That is the reasonable expectation. Here is what actually happens. You report the breach by filing a form. The form goes into a queue. The queue produces a hearing date. The hearing date is 6 to 8 weeks away. At the hearing, your ex provides an explanation. The explanation is that the children were unwell. The court notes the breach, expresses concern, and warns that further breaches may result in enforcement action. Your ex nods. You leave. The following Saturday, a text arrives at 7:53. I had been through that cycle 3 times. 3 hearings, 3 sets of assurances, 3 identical outcomes. My solicitor was a woman called Frances, methodical, unsentimental, and possessed of an unusual talent for controlled fury. Frances had told me after the 3rd hearing that we needed to change strategy. She said the court was treating each breach as an isolated incident rather than a pattern, and that the only way to change that was to put undeniable evidence of a pattern in front of the judge in a form that could not be individually explained away. She said, "We need something that proves this is coordinated, not coincidental." Let me stop at 2 minutes and ask you something directly. When your children are kept from you 8 Saturdays running, what does that feel like? Not the legal dimension of it, the physical dimension. The hour you would normally be loading the car, the route you drove every week, the smell of the contact center waiting room, which is carpet cleaner and something underneath it, something institutional, a smell that gets into your clothes. I know that smell very well now. I want you to understand the quality of the anger I am describing as quietly furious, because it is a specific kind of anger. It is not hot. It is cold and weight-bearing and permanent. It is the anger of a person who has done everything correctly and watched it make no difference. I had never missed a payment, never been late, never violated the order. I had documentation of every contact, every communication, every excuse. And I had 8 empty Saturdays stacked up like evidence that the system did not actually work. The family friend was a man called Mark, my oldest friend, the kind of person who shows up without being asked, and he had been present at the last attempted handover before the text began. Mark had arrived with me on the 4th Saturday, the first one I had asked him to attend, because I had started to feel the need for a witness I trusted. He had sat in the car while I went to the door. He had seen what happened at the door. His account of that morning was different from the account my ex later provided to the court in several specific and important ways, and Frances had obtained a written statement from him which was now part of our evidence bundle. Midpoint, this is where it doubles. The hearing in October was different from the previous 3 in one specific way. Frances had applied for a Section 91A order, which is a restriction that prevents a party from making further applications to the court without permission, used in cases of persistent misuse of the process, and had framed it not as a punishment but as a protective measure for the children. This reframing changed the stakes. The previous hearings had been about whether the contact was happening. This one was about whether my ex's conduct represented a pattern of behaviour that warranted a structural response. The judge was a woman I had not appeared before. She reviewed the evidence bundle before the hearing. She had read Frances's position statement. She had read Mark's statement. She had read my log of all 8 Saturdays with timestamps, message screenshots, and cross-referenced school attendance records that showed the children had been in school on 4 of the 8 days I had been told they were too ill for contact. School on Monday. Too ill on Saturday. 4 times. The delayed reveal arrived in the form of a message thread that Frances had obtained through disclosure, the formal process by which both parties are required to share relevant communications. The thread was between my ex and her mother, running across the previous 3 months. It contained 41 messages. 14 of them were directly relevant to the Saturday cancellations. They included messages sent on Friday evenings discussing whether to cancel the following day's contact, messages confirming that the grandmother would be present at the house to reinforce the cancellation if I challenged it, and one message, sent the Thursday before the third cancelled visit, in which my ex wrote explicitly that she needed more time before the children went back to seeing him regularly, and that she was going to keep things as they were for now. More time before the children went back. Her words. Her phone. Her message to her mother the Thursday before a cancellation, she would later describe to the court as a response to a genuine illness. The judge did not raise her voice, she did not use dramatic language. She said in measured terms that the evidence before her indicated a sustained and deliberate pattern of interference with a lawful contact order, that the explanations provided at previous hearings had not been accurate, and that the court was not prepared to continue managing this through repeated enforcement hearings. She made a transfer of residence order. A transfer of residence order. Not additional contact, not a warning, not another set of assurances. A transfer of the children's primary residence to me, with contact for their mother on alternate weekends, pending a welfare review in 6 months. I want to give my ex something here because I have thought about this for a long time. She was not acting without motivation. The marriage had ended badly. There were things she was afraid of that I did not fully understand, and some of those fears were not irrational. She had convinced herself that limiting my contact was protecting the children from instability, and she had persuaded her mother to help her, and together they had constructed a version of events that felt internally consistent to both of them. She was not a monster. She was a person who had decided that what she wanted and what was best for the children were the same thing, and had stopped checking whether that was actually true. The bittersweet part of this story is that Finn and Maisie have been living with me since November. They are settled. Finn's school attendance has improved. Maisie has started a dance class she had apparently been asking to join for over a year. The practical reality of their lives is better, and I am grateful for that every single day. What I carry is something I cannot put down. There are 8 Saturdays I will never have back. Finn was 8 for those Saturdays, and now he is 9, and I watched him turn 9 in a contact centre waiting room that smelled of carpet cleaner waiting for a door that did not open. You do not recover those hours, you carry them as a specific shape of loss that sits alongside everything else. The question I still ask is this: what happens to the father who does not have Frances, who cannot afford the disclosure application, who does not have a Mark who was there and is willing to give a statement? What happens to his 8 Saturdays? I know the answer. I lived inside the system long enough to know the answer, and I do not think it is good enough.